The encounter. The battlefield stretched endlessly, barren and lifeless, under the dim glow of a dying sun. Broken machines, shattered weapons, and scorched earth bore silent witness to countless battles fought here. This was the alien army's chosen arena, a place where no enemy had ever survived. Today, they faced a single opponent, a human. Commander Xoreth of the Veltrian Empire stood tall on his command platform, his metallic armor gleaming in the weak sunlight. He watched the lone figure on the field through the zoomed lens of his visor. The human was unarmed. Dressed in a simple black combat suit, he stood motionless, staring at the gathered alien forces as if he had all the time in the world. It was insulting. "Charge the plasma cannon," Xoreth barked. His voice echoed through the command ship, sending technicians scrambling to comply. The plasma cannon, a massive weapon capable of obliterating entire cities, hummed to life. Its power core glowed a sickly green, and its energy rippled through the air, creating a low, ominous vibration. The human remained still. Not a flicker of fear crossed his face. Xoreth frowned. This was not the reaction he expected. Every other species in the galaxy had trembled before the might of the Veltrian Empire. Yet here was this human, standing alone, facing an entire army, and smiling. "Commander," a junior officer hesitated. He's laughing." Xoreth's eyes narrowed. He adjusted his visor and zoomed in further. The human's mouth moved, and though the sound didn't carry over the vast field, there was no mistaking it. The human was indeed laughing. It wasn't a nervous laugh, nor the hysterical kind that often came from desperation. This was calm, confident, and maddeningly smug. "Fire the cannon," Xoreth snapped. "Let's wipe that smile off his face." The cannon fired with a deafening roar. A massive beam of green plasma erupted from the weapon, cutting through the air like a blazing comet. The ground shook violently as the beam streaked toward the human. Dust, rocks, and debris were thrown into the air, creating a cloud of destruction that engulfed the target. Silence fell. The battlefield seemed to hold its breath. The Veltrian soldiers watched, waiting for the dust to settle, eager to see the remains of the insolent human. Surely, no one could survive such an attack. But then, movement. A shadow appeared in the swirling dust. It grew clearer with each passing second until, at last, the human stepped forward. Not only was he alive, but he was completely unharmed. His suit showed no signs of damage, and his expression hadn't changed. If anything, his smirk had grown wider. The Veltrian forces erupted into chaos. Soldiers whispered among themselves, their voices trembling with confusion and fear. The cannon, their most powerful weapon, had done nothing. Xoreth clenched his fists. "What is the meaning of this?" he roared. "Why isn't he dead?" The human raised a hand, waving mockingly at the command platform. Then, as if to add insult to injury, he shouted something. A technician scrambled to amplify the sound. "Is that all you've got?" The human's voice rang out, casual and almost bored. "I expected more from the mighty Veltrian Empire." Xoreth's rage boiled over. "Deploy the strike teams. Surround him. I want him captured, alive or dead." Veltrian soldiers poured onto the battlefield, their weapons glowing with energy. They moved with precision, encircling the human in a tightening formation. But the man didn't flinch. Instead, he casually cracked his neck, stretched his arms, and muttered something to himself. When the first soldier lunged at him, the human moved. It wasn't just speed. It was grace, precision, and power. He dodged, twisted, and struck back with devastating efficiency. Within moments, 3 Veltrian soldiers lay unconscious on the ground. The remaining soldiers hesitated, unsure whether to attack. The human tilted his head, his smirk now a full-blown grin. "What's the matter?" he taunted, afraid of one unarmed man. Xoreth slammed his fist against the console. "What kind of trickery is this? Who is he?" Another officer nervously approached. "Commander, he's not just anyone. Our intelligence suggests he's Captain Riker, a veteran of Earth's Special Forces. They say he was part of some secret project, something the humans have kept hidden from the galaxy." Soreth's eyes widened. "What kind of project?" The officer swallowed hard. "We don't know, sir. But it's said they've been preparing for this. For us." The human, Captain Riker, stood in the center of the battlefield, surrounded by fallen soldiers. He looked up at the command platform and gave a two-finger salute. "You'll need more than that to take me down," he called out. Soreth's anger turned to unease. This wasn't how battles with humans were supposed to go. They were supposed to be weak, primitive, and easily crushed. But this human, he was something else entirely. And for the first time in his long career, Soreth felt a pang of fear. The human's secret. The battlefield grew eerily quiet as Captain Riker stood amidst the wreckage of the Veltrian strike teams. He dusted off his black combat suit, acting as though he'd just finished a casual morning workout. The alien soldiers around him hesitated, their once confident demeanor replaced by uncertainty. Even their advanced targeting systems seemed useless against the man who had just defied their most powerful weapon. High above, on the command platform, Commander Soreth struggled to maintain composure. His metallic claws tapped anxiously on the console as he reviewed the battlefield footage. It didn't make sense. Plasma-resistant armor wasn't unheard of, but nothing could withstand a full-powered blast from the Veltrian Empire's plasma cannon. "What are you hiding, human?" Soreth muttered, narrowing his eyes. Riker, as if hearing the commander's words, began pacing casually through the battlefield. He looked up at the command platform, his voice amplified by unseen technology. "You're wondering how I survived, aren't you?" he called out, his tone laced with amusement. "You Veltrians think your technology makes you invincible, but you've never met humans like me before." The soldiers tensed as Riker's voice echoed across the battlefield. "Oh, and for the record," he added, "that plasma cannon of yours. Impressive, but it's a little outdated." The statement sent a ripple of unease through the ranks. Outdated? How could a weapon capable of destroying planets be outdated? Soreth barked at his officers. "Get me a full analysis of his suit. I want to know what we're dealing with." The technicians scrambled, scanning every detail of Riker's combat suit. Within moments, the analysis appeared on the commander's screen. The readings made no sense. "Impossible," one technician whispered. "His suit isn't just absorbing plasma energy, it's converting it." Soreth's claw slammed against the console. "Converting it into what?" "Power, Commander," the technician stammered. "He's using your attack to fuel his own systems." The realization struck Soreth like a blow. The human wasn't just surviving their weapons, he was turning their greatest strength against them. Riker smirked as he watched the panic ripple through the Veltrian ranks. "You've ruled the galaxy for centuries," he said, his voice calm and confident. "You've crushed countless species under your boot, but you made one critical mistake." Soreth leaned forward, his metallic eyes narrowing. "And what mistake is that, human?" Riker stopped walking, planting his feet firmly on the ground. He raised his head, and his smirk faded, replaced by a deadly seriousness. "You underestimated humanity." Suddenly, Riker raised his arm. A faint hum filled the air as his suit's energy surged to life. The Veltrian soldiers instinctively raised their weapons, but Riker didn't attack. Instead, he pressed a small device on his wrist, and the battlefield was bathed in a pulsating blue light. The Veltrian systems began to fail. Weapons malfunctioned, targeting systems flickered, and communication channels filled with static. Soldiers shouted in confusion as their technology, once thought infallible, crumbled around them. "What is he doing?" Soreth demanded, his voice rising with panic. Another technician looked up from her console. "Commander, it's an EMP field. He's disabling our equipment." Soreth's claws tightened around the edges of the console. "How?" No human technology can produce an EMP of this magnitude. Riker's voice cut through the chaos. You've spent so long dominating weaker species that you forgot how to adapt. Humans, on the other hand, are masters of survival. Every battle, every war, each one has made us stronger. The commander's fear turned to fury. Enough of this. Activate the drones. They operate on a separate frequency. Let's see him disable those. From the Veltrian command ship, a fleet of sleek, black drones descended onto the battlefield. Their sharp edges gleamed under the alien sun, and their plasma cannons glowed menacingly. They moved with precision, converging on Riker like a swarm of deadly predators. Riker, unfazed, tilted his head. Drones. That's cute. As the drones closed in, Riker raised his hand again. This time, his suit emitted a sharp, high-pitched pulse. The drones froze mid-air, their lights flickering. Then, one by one, they began to drop to the ground, their systems completely fried. The Veltrian soldiers stared in disbelief. The human had just neutralized their most advanced technology with a wave of his hand. "You call yourselves the pinnacle of galactic power," Riker said, stepping over the fallen drones. "But your strength lies in your machines. You've forgotten what it means to fight, to adapt, to think beyond your programming." On the command platform, Sorath seethed with rage. "You think you're clever, human? This is only the beginning. We have more weapons, more soldiers, more fleets. You cannot stand against the full might of the Veltrian Empire." Riker smiled, a calm yet dangerous glint in his eye. "Who said I was alone?" As if on cue, a signal crackled through the Veltrian communication systems. A voice, strong and commanding, echoed across the battlefield. "This is Fleet Admiral Hayes of Earth's United Defense Corps. All Veltrian forces, stand down immediately. You're surrounded." High above the battlefield, the cloaking systems of several massive human ships disengage, revealing an entire fleet. The Veltrians, once confident in their supremacy, now found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Sorath stared at the screen, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. "No, this isn't possible." Riker looked up at the command platform, his grin returning. "Welcome to the new galaxy, Commander. Alien counterattack." Commander Sorath slammed his metallic fist on the console, denting the reinforced panel. The once mighty Veltrian forces now stood in disarray, their advanced weaponry rendered useless by a single human and his fleet. But Sorath was no ordinary commander. He hadn't risen through the Veltrian ranks by giving up at the first sign of trouble. "Regroup," he roared, his voice cutting through the panic. "All units, fall back and prepare for Phase 2. We will crush these humans." Veltrian soldiers scrambled to obey, retreating to defensive positions. Drones that had been unaffected by Riker's EMP pulsed to life, swarming in calculated formations. Underground hangars opened, releasing sleek, insect-like mechs armed with plasma blades and energy shields. The Veltrians weren't done yet. On the battlefield, Captain Riker watched the chaos with an amused smirk. His wrist communicator buzzed. Admiral Hayes' voice came through, calm and commanding. "Riker, they're regrouping. Intel suggests they're deploying subterranean mechs. How's the situation on the ground?" Riker chuckled, his tone light despite the looming threat. "Just another Tuesday, Admiral. Let them come. They're about to learn why Earth doesn't play by the rules." As the mechs emerged, their massive frames towering over the battlefield, Riker casually activated his suit's next feature. With a faint hum, a holographic map of the area appeared in front of him, highlighting the Veltrian forces and their movements in real time. Every step they took, every angle they covered, it was all laid bare. "Interesting," Riker muttered, analyzing their strategy. "They're going for a pincer's maneuver. Classic. Too bad they're up against someone who knows how to think 10 steps ahead." With a quick motion, he tapped his wrist communicator, sending a signal to his hidden allies. Seconds later, a series of explosions erupted beneath the advancing mechs, throwing them off balance and toppling several to the ground. The Veltrians hadn't realized the humans had already infiltrated their underground supply lines. Inside the command ship, Soreth stared at the screens, his fury mounting. How did they breach our defenses? One of his officers stammered. Commander, it seems the humans deployed stealth units during their approach. They've sabotaged our mech deployment tunnels. Soreth's metallic claws scraped against the console as he snarled. They're too coordinated. This isn't just one man. They've planned for this. On the battlefield, Riker wasn't finished. The mechs that survived the initial sabotage regrouped, their plasma blades igniting with a menacing hiss. They charged at Riker, their massive strides shaking the ground. But Riker stood his ground, calmly assessing their approach. All right, he said to himself, cracking his knuckles. Time for a little demonstration. As the first mech swung its blade, Riker dodged with inhuman speed, his suit enhancing his reflexes. He leaped onto the mech's arm, scaling it effortlessly. Before the Veltrian pilot could react, Riker planted a small device on the mech's chassis and jumped off. The mech froze mid-motion, its systems hijacked by the device. With a loud groan, it turned on its allies, striking another mech with its plasma blade. The Veltrian pilots shouted in confusion as their once reliable war machines turned into weapons of chaos. This is impossible, Soreth bellowed. How can one human outmaneuver us like this? Riker's voice echoed across the battlefield again, amplified by his communicator. You Veltrians rely too much on your machines. You've forgotten how to think creatively. Humans, on the other hand, thrive on chaos. As the Veltrian forces tried to regain control, Riker signaled another hidden ally. High above, one of Earth's stealth drones decloaked, dropping a payload that released a dense, magnetic fog across the battlefield. The fog disrupted the Veltrian systems further, blinding their sensors and cutting off communication between units. Riker moved through the chaos like a ghost, taking out soldiers and disabling mechs with surgical precision. His every move was calculated, yet unpredictable, like a predator playing with its prey. Inside the command ship, Soreth felt the first sting of doubt. He's not just a soldier, he muttered. He's a strategist. One of his officers hesitated before replying. Commander, our forces are requesting reinforcements. The human fleet is still holding position, and if they join the fight... Soreth cut him off. No, we don't need reinforcements. We need a plan. His eyes gleamed with determination. Activate the containment field. If we can't beat him on the battlefield, we'll trap him. On the ground, Riker noticed the sudden shift in energy. The air around him shimmered, and a faint hum grew louder. A massive energy dome began to form, trapping him and the remaining Veltrian forces inside. Riker looked up, his expression unreadable. Interesting move, he murmured. Let's see what you've got, Commander. Soreth's voice boomed through the battlefield. You're clever, human, but you're trapped now. Let's see how long your tricks last. Riker smirked, glancing at his communicator. Admiral, it seems they're trying to box me in. Hayes' reply was calm and confident. Do they really think a cage can hold you? Riker chuckled. Not for long. As the containment field solidified, Riker began tapping into his suit's hidden features. He wasn't just prepared for a fight. He was prepared for a war. And the Veltrians were about to find out just how dangerous a cornered human could be. Humanity strikes back. The shimmering energy dome hummed ominously, a prison designed to crush resistance and contain chaos. Commander Soreth watched from his command platform, his confidence partially restored. The human, for all his tricks, was now trapped like an animal. Victory, Soreth thought, was inevitable. Inside the containment field, Riker scanned his surroundings. The dome wasn't just a barrier, it was a death trap. Its energy readings revealed a gradual compression field designed to shrink until everything inside was annihilated. The Veltrians weren't pulling any punches. They're trying hard this time, Riker muttered, tapping his wrist console. His suit's interface lit up, analyzing the dome's frequency. He needed to buy time. Above the battlefield, cloaked human ships observed silently. Fleet Admiral Hayes leaned forward in her command chair, her sharp eyes fixed on the scene below. The Veltrian strategy was clear: isolate and overwhelm. But she wasn't about to let her best operative fight alone. "Commence Operation Mirage," she ordered. Her voice was steady, betraying no hint of the tension in the room. The human fleet came to life. Stealth ships decloaked, shimmering into existence like shadows breaking free of the night. Their sleek designs and unorthodox structures contrasted sharply with the rigid lines of the Veltrian warships. Without warning, the fleet began firing. The Veltrian command ship shuddered under the first wave of attacks. Sorath's officers scrambled to respond. "Commander, human vessels have decloaked and are targeting our engines. Deploy the second fleet." Sorath barked. "Crush them before they compromise our systems." As Veltrian reinforcements surged toward the human fleet, Hayes smirked. "They're taking the bait." Perfect. On the ground, Riker noticed the sudden drop in Veltrian troop activity. They were redirecting their focus to the fleet above. "Classic distraction," he said to himself. "Nice work, Admiral." Riker activated his suit's next feature, a compact energy disruptor embedded in his gloves. He placed his hands against the dome and pushed. Sparks flew as his disruptor clashed with the containment field. It wouldn't hold forever, but he didn't need forever. Just enough time for the next phase. Suddenly, the dome flickered. A loud roar filled the air as one of Earth's specialized infiltration pods crashed into the battlefield. The dome's energy fluctuated, momentarily weakened by the shockwave. Riker wasted no time. He leaped toward the pod as its hatch hissed open, revealing a team of human operatives clad in advanced tactical suits. "About time," Riker said, grinning as he climbed aboard. The team leader, a sharp-eyed woman named Captain Vega, smirked back. "Didn't think you'd need help, Riker." "Don't flatter yourself," Riker replied. "I was just warming up." The pod's onboard systems began firing concentrated bursts of energy at the containment field, destabilizing it further. Outside, the Veltrians scrambled to maintain the field, but their focus was divided. Earth's fleet was relentless, and their unorthodox tactics left the Veltrians reeling. "Commander, the containment field is destabilizing," an officer shouted on Sorath's command ship. "Hold it together." Sorath roared. "Send reinforcements to the ground. Do not let that human escape." But it was too late. With a deafening crack, the containment field shattered. The shockwave threw Veltrian soldiers off their feet, and the humans emerged from the pod, weapons drawn. "Time to turn the tide," Riker said, charging into the fray with Vega and her team at his side. The battlefield erupted into chaos. The Veltrians fought back with everything they had. But the humans were relentless. Riker's suit gave him an edge, but it was the teamwork and ingenuity of the human operatives that truly shone. They moved like a well-oiled machine, exploiting every weakness in the Veltrian formation. Above, Hayes's fleet executed precision strikes, targeting critical Veltrian systems. One by one, Veltrian ships began to fall. For every human vessel destroyed, 2 more Veltrian ships went down. The tide was shifting, and the galaxy was beginning to see that humanity was not to be underestimated. Back on the battlefield, Riker and Vega reached the Veltrian command outpost. Sorath's image flickered on a nearby holographic screen, his expression a mix of fury and disbelief. "You think this is over, human?" Sorath snarled. "You've only delayed the inevitable. The Veltrian Empire will crush you." Riker smirked, leaning toward the screen. "Funny, that's exactly what the last Empire said." With a quick motion, he activated a signal on his wrist console. High above, the largest human ship, the Odyssey, unleashed a massive EMP burst, disabling the remaining Veltrian systems. The command ship's lights flickered as Sorath's screen went dark. Vega turned to Riker, her expression serious. "He's not going to give up, you know. The Veltrians never do." Riker nodded. Let him come. We're just getting started. As the battlefield quieted, the Veltrian forces began to retreat. Riker stood among the ruins, watching as the remnants of the once mighty Empire scrambled to regroup. He tapped his communicator. "Admiral Hayes," he said, "the field's clear. What's the next move?" Hayes's voice came through, steady and unwavering. "We push forward. The galaxy needs to see what happens when humanity fights back." Riker's smirk returned. "Understood. Let's give them a show they'll never forget." The galactic reveal. The battlefield was silent but tense. Veltrian forces, battered and humiliated, had retreated to regroup. Above, the human fleet hovered like silent sentinels, their sleek ships cloaked in defiance. But Captain Riker wasn't one to sit back and wait for the enemy to recover. He knew the Veltrians were up to something desperate. Riker stood at the center of the wreckage, his tactical suit recharging from the energy it had absorbed during the battle. Captain Vega approached, her expression grim but determined. "They're falling back," she said. "But this isn't over. Sorath's planning something, and he's not going to play fair." Riker nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Sorath doesn't know how to play fair, but neither do we." Suddenly, his wrist communicator beeped. Admiral Hayes's voice cut through the silence. "Riker, we've intercepted Veltrian communications. They're rallying reinforcements from their nearest stronghold. If they regroup, we'll be outnumbered 10-1. Riker smirked. "Good thing we've got a few surprises of our own." Hayes's voice carried a note of amusement. "You're not thinking of pulling a stunt, are you?" Riker chuckled. "When am I not?" Meanwhile, in the Veltrian command ship, Commander Sorath paced back and forth, his claws clinking against the metal floor. His officers sat in silence, afraid to speak. The humiliation of their failure weighed heavily on them all, but Sorath's fury burned hotter than ever. "Send a transmission to the High Council," Sorath growled. "Tell them the humans are not just a nuisance. They are a threat to the entire Empire." One officer hesitated. "Commander, are you suggesting?" Sorath turned on him, his eyes blazing. "I'm suggesting that we bring the full might of the Veltrian Empire to bear. Humanity has overstepped its bounds, and it's time we remind them of their place." The officer nodded and began typing furiously at his console. Within moments, the holographic form of a towering Veltrian elder appeared before Sorath. "Commander Sorath," the elder said, his voice cold and regal. "Explain why you have interrupted the council's deliberations." Sorath bowed slightly, his tone desperate but respectful. "Esteemed counselor, the humans have unleashed chaos upon our forces. Their technology defies our understanding, and their tactics are unorthodox. They are not the primitives we once thought them to be." The elder's eyes narrowed. "Are you admitting defeat, Commander?" Sorath's fists clenched. "No, but I request authorization to deploy the Rift engine." Gasps filled the command room. The Rift engine was a forbidden weapon, capable of tearing space-time apart. It wasn't just a weapon of war. It was an extinction event waiting to happen. The elder hesitated. "If you use the Rift engine, you risk destabilizing this entire sector." Sorath's voice grew colder. "If we do not, the humans will destabilize the Empire itself." The elder stared at him for a long moment before finally nodding. "Permission granted. Use it wisely." Back on the battlefield, Riker and Vega moved swiftly through the wreckage, their squad following close behind. They reached the remains of a Veltrian outpost, where hidden human tech had been secretly installed. Riker tapped a panel, and a hidden cache of advanced weapons and tools revealed itself. Vega raised an eyebrow. "You planned for this?" Riker shrugged. "Always plan for the worst. That way, nothing surprises you." Suddenly, an alert blared through their communicators. Hayes's voice came through, sharp and urgent. "Riker, the Veltrians are activating the Rift engine." Riker froze. Even he hadn't expected this. "The Rift engine? That's a suicide move." "They're desperate," Hayes replied. And if they succeed, it won't just take out our fleet. It'll destroy everything in this sector. Vega's face darkened. What's the plan? Riker's smirk returned, but his eyes held a dangerous glint. We stop them before they can fire it. The Veltrian stronghold. Deep within the fortified Veltrian base, the Rift engine hummed ominously as its massive core began to charge. Veltrian engineers worked frantically, their faces pale with fear. The weapon was as dangerous to them as it was to their enemies. Riker and his team infiltrated the stronghold with precision, using cloaking devices and misdirection to bypass the heavy defenses. As they moved through the base, the sound of the Rift engine grew louder, its energy pulsating like a heartbeat. "Time's running out," Vega whispered. "How do we shut it down?" Riker scanned the schematics on his wrist console. "We don't shut it down. We hijack it." Vega's eyes widened. "You're insane." Riker grinned. "You say that like it's a bad thing." The final push. Riker's team reached the control room, where Veltrian engineers scrambled to finalize the Rift engine's activation sequence. Without hesitation, Riker and Vega stormed the room, disabling the guards and taking control of the console. As Riker worked to override the system, Soreth's holographic image appeared on a nearby screen. His voice dripped with venom. "You think you can outsmart me, human? The Rift engine is beyond your comprehension." Riker didn't even look up. "You Veltrians really love to hear yourselves talk, don't you?" Soreth snarled, but before he could reply, the Rift engine's hum began to falter. Riker's override was working, redirecting the energy away from its destructive purpose. "Admiral Hayes," Riker said through his communicator, "we've got control of the Rift engine. Prepare for a little fireworks display." "Understood," Hayes replied. "We'll cover your exit." As the Veltrians realized what was happening, panic spread through their ranks. The Rift engine's energy surged outward, not as a destructive force, but as a wave of power that disrupted every Veltrian system in the sector. Ships powered down, weapons became useless, and the once mighty Veltrian forces were left completely vulnerable. Riker and his team escaped just as the energy wave cascaded across the battlefield. Soreth's furious screams echoed in the distance as his command ship lost power. Riker stood outside the stronghold, watching as the Veltrian fleet fell into complete disarray. Vega approached, her expression a mix of relief and admiration. "You really pulled it off," she said. Riker smirked. "Told you. Humans thrive on chaos." As the human fleet moved in to secure the area, Riker turned his gaze to the stars. This wasn't just a battle, it was a message to the galaxy, and humanity was just getting started. The turning point. The battlefield lay silent, but the tension was palpable. The Veltrian fleet, now powerless and adrift, hung like ominous relics against the starry backdrop. Yet inside the remnants of their command ship, Commander Soreth's fury burned hotter than ever. Despite the devastation wrought by humanity's ingenuity, he wasn't ready to admit defeat. In the shadows of the Veltrian flagship, a hidden hangar opened, revealing the Harbinger, the Empire's most dangerous weapon. A dreadnought equipped with experimental warp destabilizers and a quantum blade that could carve through entire fleets. As its engines roared to life, Soreth activated a direct line to Riker's frequency. "You've proven resourceful, human," Soreth said, his voice cold and venomous. "But resourcefulness won't save you from this." Riker, aboard a human transport pod en route to the Odyssey, smirked as the Veltrian commander's voice crackled through his communicator. "Still clinging to hope, Soreth? That's almost human of you." Soreth's laugh was bitter. "Hope? No, Captain. This is certainty. Witness the end of your defiance." Riker's pod was jostled as the Harbinger unleashed its first weapon, a destabilizing pulse that rippled through the void. Human ships shimmered as their cloaking devices faltered, exposing the fleet. "Admiral Hayes, we've got a problem," Riker said, steadying himself. Soreth just pulled his ace, and it's a nasty one. Hayes's voice came through, calm despite the chaos. We see it. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Riker, do what you do best. The Harbinger unleashed. The Harbinger powered up its quantum blade, a massive energy-infused structure that extended from the ship's hull. With a blinding flash, it swung through the void, carving a devastating arc toward the Odyssey. Human ships scattered, narrowly avoiding the attack. On board the Harbinger, Sorath's officers cheered. The human fleet, so confident moments ago, now appeared vulnerable. But Riker wasn't done. From his pod, he activated a direct line to Vega, still stationed at the Veltrian stronghold. "Vega, we need that rift engine tech you recovered. Tell me you've got it operational." Vega's voice crackled through the communicator. "Barely. What's the plan?" Riker grinned. "We're going to turn their toy against them. The counterattack." Riker's pod docked with the Odyssey, where Hayes awaited him on the bridge. The Harbinger loomed on the view screen, its quantum blade charging for another strike. "Suggestions?" Hayes asked, her tone clipped but focused. Riker pulled up the schematics Vega had sent. The Harbinger's warp destabilizer is impressive, but it's tied to their power core. If we can overload it, the whole thing will implode. Hayes raised an eyebrow. "And how do you propose we do that?" Riker tapped his wrist console, bringing up a holographic model of the Rift engine. "We turn the Rift engine into a Trojan horse. Load it with an energy surge, deliver it straight into their destabilizer, and boom, they're out of the game." Hayes nodded. "Risky. I like it. Make it happen." Executing the plan, Vega's team worked furiously to modify the Rift engine. Meanwhile, Riker and a small strike team boarded a stealth shuttle, braving the Harbinger's defenses to deliver the payload. As the shuttle approached, Veltrian fighters swarmed, forcing the human fleet into action. The Odyssey unleashed precise volleys, keeping the Harbinger's escort ships occupied while the stealth shuttle slipped through the chaos. Inside the Harbinger, Sorath paced the bridge. His officers reported the human fleet's movements, but none detected the stealth shuttle docking on the ship's underside. "Humans," Sorath sneered, always clinging to futile hope. The infiltration. Riker and his team breached the Harbinger's hull, navigating its labyrinthine corridors. The atmosphere was oppressive, the hum of the quantum blade resonating through the ship. As they approached the destabilizer core, Riker's communicator buzzed. Vega's voice came through. "We're sending you the overload sequence now. You'll need to plant it directly on the core." "Piece of cake," Riker replied. But as he rounded the corner, a squad of Veltrian guards blocked their path. The ensuing firefight was intense. Riker and his team moved with precision, using their advanced suits to outmaneuver the Veltrians. Plasma bolts ricocheted off walls as Riker pressed forward, planting the Rift engine payload on the core. The Harbinger's fall. Sorath realized too late what was happening. Alarms blared as the Harbinger's systems began to overload. "What have they done?" He roared, slamming his fists into the console. On the human side, Hayes' voice came through the fleet's channels. "All ships, retreat to safe distance. The Harbinger is going critical." Riker's team raced back to their shuttle, barely escaping as the Harbinger's power core erupted in a cascade of blinding energy. The explosion consumed the massive dreadnought, leaving nothing but debris in its wake. The aftermath. As the human fleet regrouped, Riker stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, watching the remnants of the Veltrian fleet scatter. Sorath's flagship had been destroyed, and the Veltrians were in full retreat. Hayes approached him, her expression a mix of relief and respect. "You did it." Riker smirked. "We did it. They underestimated us, and it cost them." Hayes nodded. "This wasn't just a victory, Riker. It was a message." Riker turned to the stars, his voice steady. "Yeah, a message the galaxy won't forget. Victory and hope." The galaxy was watching. The fall of the Veltrian Harbinger had sent shockwaves across countless star systems, disrupting the once unquestioned dominance of the Veltrian Empire. For the first time in centuries, a flicker of hope burned in the hearts of oppressed civilizations. But Captain Riker wasn't celebrating yet. He stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, his expression as unreadable as the stars outside. The Veltrians had retreated, yes, but Riker knew better than to assume they were finished. "Admiral Hayes," he said, breaking the tense silence. "What's the status of their remaining fleets?" Hayes, standing nearby, tapped a glowing console. "Scattered. Fragmented. Reports indicate several of their outposts have gone dark, likely abandoned." Riker's lips curved into a faint smile. "Looks like they're scared." Hayes nodded but didn't return the smile. "Scared is good. Desperate is dangerous. We need to stay ahead of them." A new alliance. The victory wasn't just a turning point for humanity. It was a beacon for others. Aboard the Odyssey, Riker and Hayes prepared to meet with representatives of several alien species who had lived under Veltrian rule. The ship's grand hall, once a war room, was now a gathering place for unlikely allies. One by one, the representatives arrived. Tall insectoid beings with iridescent exoskeletons, aquatic creatures encased in mobile water chambers, and feline-like aliens with sharp, piercing eyes. They were diverse, but they all shared one thing: a burning desire for freedom. An elder from the Kelsari race, an avian-like species with vibrant plumage, stepped forward. "Captain Riker," she said, her voice melodic yet firm, "you've done what we believed impossible. You've shown that the Veltrians can be challenged." Riker inclined his head. "They can do more than be challenged. They can be defeated, but we can't do it alone." The elder nodded. "We are ready. The time has come to unite." Soreth's final stand. Unbeknownst to the gathering, Soreth had not abandoned his mission. Deep in a hidden stronghold, he convened with the Veltrian High Council. Their holographic forms loomed above him, their disapproving gazes cutting into his resolve. "You have failed us, Soreth," one counselor hissed. "The Harbinger is gone, and the Empire's fleets are in disarray." Soreth's claws clenched. "The humans are resourceful, but they are not invincible. Allow me one final chance. I will crush their alliance before it can take root." The counselors exchanged wary glances. Finally, the eldest among them spoke. "You have one chance, Commander. Use it wisely." The ambush. As Riker and Hayes solidified the alliance aboard the Odyssey, a Veltrian fleet emerged from hyperspace, weapons primed. It was an ambush, a desperate attempt to shatter the fragile unity forming among humanity and its new allies. Alarms blared, and Riker snapped into action. "All hands to battle stations. Get our allies to safety." The alien representatives, initially startled, quickly showed their resolve. The Kelsari elder spoke into a communicator, rallying her people. The aquatic delegates signaled their hidden fleets, while the feline warriors armed themselves with razor-sharp energy claws. As Veltrian ships closed in, the newly formed coalition unleashed a coordinated counterattack. It wasn't just humanity's ingenuity on display anymore. It was the combined strength of a galaxy that had been pushed too far. A risky gambit. On the battlefield, Soreth's flagship loomed, directing the Veltrian forces with ruthless efficiency. But Riker had anticipated this move. He had a plan, a risky gambit that could end the Veltrian threat once and for all. Riker boarded a stealth shuttle, accompanied by Vega and a small team. Their target, Soreth himself. If they could take out the Veltrian commander, the Empire's remaining forces would crumble. Inside the flagship, Riker's team fought their way to the command center. Soreth stood waiting, his armor gleaming and his claws poised for battle. "You've been a thorn in my side for too long, human," Soreth snarled. Riker grinned. "And you've been an overconfident bully. Let's see who wins this time." The fight was brutal. Soreth's raw strength clashed with Riker's agility and tactical brilliance. Blades and plasma clashed in a dazzling display of combat. Finally, with a clever feint, Riker disarmed Soreth and held a blade to his throat. It's over, Riker said. Surrender, and maybe the galaxy will remember you as something other than a tyrant. Thorath sneered, but, seeing no way out, reluctantly signaled his fleet to stand down.